Welcome to the ISC Squared online event. Coming to you tonight from Johannesburg, South Africa. Good evening. Welcome to all delegates for joining the chapter event tonight. My name is Sunisha Ramesa. I am the marketing person of the Gauteng chapter and also represent CyberSun, where we are involved in cybersecurity awareness and data protection. I welcome you to an evening of presentations and good company with two dynamic speakers. The Gauteng Information Security Chapter is a registered non-profit organization established in 2012 to promote the advancement of cybersecurity and operates the only South African chapter of ISC Squared, the world's leading cybersecurity professional organization. ISC Squared has a simple vision: inspire a safe and secure cyber world. This is a vision close to the hearts of our members. Our mission is to enable members to build a local network of peers, to share knowledge, exchange resources, collaborate on projects, and participate in activities to earn continuing professional education credits. Our chapter events expose members to knowledge sharing from industry leaders. The community is focused on helping the development of leaders and professionals in information security and cybersecurity. We aim to keep our members informed of the latest development techniques and policies. We also promote awareness of the profession and educate the public on how to counter security threats. I want to update you on what's been happening in the chapter. The chapter office bearers remain Dinesh Govender as president, Stan Loam as treasurer, Rachel Chinyoka as secretary, and Sanjay Ramesa as membership chair. The two high focus initiatives are organizational partnerships and the development of the SUSE prep study groups. This year also marked the introduction of no-cost membership for interns who are registered at tertiary study institutions in Southern Africa. The event role for 2021 should be developed in advance, and we urge interested parties who would like to collaborate with us in events just like this to contact us. As we navigate through a new frontier thrust upon us by the COVID pandemic, we encounter new variables and unpredictable shifts in the economic sphere globally. Companies, as well as individuals, have had to veer course and adjust their digital transformation strategies and policies to adapt and survive the new normal. After a period of intense disruption, the next normal presents an incredible challenge to cybersecurity. As the economic and political environment are evolving, so too, they are quickly evolving cybersecurity threats. The traditional form of cybersecurity is no longer sufficient to stop this ongoing barrage of cyber attacks. We need a new approach, a proactive approach to deal with cybersecurity. Ransomware attacks are surging like never before. The sophistication of phishing emails is increasing at an alarming rate, and resulting data breaches costly than ever. So how should you, the ever-vigilant IT professional, respond? To shed more light on this, we have Dylan Nell to address us shortly. Even the world's most successful organizations have significant weaknesses in their cybersecurity defenses, which today's determined hackers can exploit at will. The development of your greatest asset, your people, are needed as a strong human firewall, as your last line of defense. By creating a strong human firewall, you have addressed your greatest asset as well as your greatest vulnerability. The first is one of the leading voices in advocating conscious ethical leadership. She has set into motion a stream of consciousness that is organically changing the landscape of how business is done and the ethos of leadership. Her executive role in many companies has set her to be an author of many books, as well as her presentation of her Conscious Companies Awards in South Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the CEO of Conscious Companies, Brenda Kylie. Brenda, it's over to you.
Thank you, Sanisha. Good evening, all. You know, when I was first asked to speak about conscious leadership and ethics in the cybersecurity space, I thought that cybersecurity was nebulous and dark and did not quite touch my world. But oh boy, was I ever wrong. On further exploration, I realized that most people, like myself, had no clue on how it impacts us every moment of every day in any number of ways. Smart Wi-Fi enabled phones, internet, Bluetooth, social media, for that matter, any form of technology, and you are in the cybersecurity space. There is a line from the New Testament in Luke that says, "Take heed that ye may not be deceived." This should apply to everyone who lives online. We are all very vulnerable. You know, we have to realize that none of us are exempt from any form of hacking, surveillance, or any attack in cyberspace. Over the past 3 decades, the converging forces of technology, the exponential growth of social media, business complexity, global integration, economic instability, financial turbulence, stakeholder activism, and the chaos and suffering of COVID-19 has seen profound shifts that have become a high-stakes battle. Millions have been deceived, by the appearance of things, rules, regulations, policies, and strategies into believing that their creation and existence is for their greater good. The Snowden documents was an eye-opener in terms of government and the depth of their mass surveillance. The entire government of Sweden was compromised when their data was breached. The Gupta leaks revealed a country that was captured and had lost trillions in the process. And the recent statement of the whistleblower from Facebook revealed that they were all about profit rather than ethics and decency. Those who listen to private conversations in the name of security, those who lack moral character in looting the hard-earned savings of pensioners, and those who use technology to scam millions around the world, have become mere tools of danger, destruction, and evil action. These revelations of wrongdoing would never have come to light had it not been for the courage and consciousness of those who whistle blew. Our failure to build an honest, ethical, and conscious society is a moral failure, as it is in the hands of every individual, and not just the leaders in government. Never before have we been plunged into such uncertainty and pressure. The profound misery, anguish, and despair, the looting and the cheating brought about by governments, business, and clandestine security operations globally are all dependent on lapses in cybersecurity. The innovative, devious tactics employed by our fellow men allows us to dive into unexplored experiences where good people risk their lives and are driven to confront the diabolic and powerful. Edward Snowden comes to mind as someone who is conscious and courageous. It takes courage to stand up, and it takes resilience to disrupt one's life and reveal the truth. When so many people in so many lands have lived to see breaches in their security and are quite powerless to do anything against the might of the politically powerful, what do we do? What should we do? We should have an awakening of what's going on around us, and an awakening that there is no better world without better men. We need the firmest possible foundation upon which to build a social structure of consciousness, ethics, especially in the age of this ever-expanding technology, where smart devices collude to bring down the infrastructure of nations. We have to find visionary, high-caliber leaders in the cybersecurity space who strive to create a meaningful and conscious environment. There is a profound opportunity here to change the course of how we behave and act in this space by changing the shape, character, and consciousness of the people in its organizations and its leadership, especially those who are responsible for cybersecurity. The current global malaise, the far-reaching effects of corruption, the greed, the impact of recession, and the reputational fallout of major companies have become a harsh reality. This raises serious questions and trust and credibility issues regarding financial behavior, integrity, governance, and ethics, both in the political and economic space. Unless our leaders embrace a new wave of consciousness, integrity, and values, we are not going to emerge from this dark cloud that threatens our national psyche as we spiral into paralyzing pessimism. However, human beings are amazing. We are truly remarkable creatures. We have a limitless desire to experience life. We have boundless aspirations and an infinite imagination. We dream of soaring through the air and then manifest aeroplanes and space shuttles into our world. We desire new experiences of connection and then create global networks of information and devices that fit in our pockets, allowing us to instantaneously connect with anyone around the world. We seek an alternate monetary system and come up with cryptocurrency. But we are also going where no man has gone before in terms of technology, as AI takes flight to new heights of innovation. On the one hand, we have human greed, new depths of malicious behavior, and a hunger for power and more. And on the other hand, if we look deeper, there is hope. We can acknowledge that one of the consequences of our vices as a species is that it gives rise to our virtues. In as much as we think that we are in the dark, dangerous, and unknown world of cyberspace, there are initiatives such as this chapter that has the ISC Squared Code of Ethics that speaks to conscious leadership, where they serve and protect. And I am paraphrasing this: the safety and welfare of society and the common good, protect society, act honorably, honestly, justly, responsibly, and legally, duty to principles, and to each other, and to adhere to the highest ethical standards of behavior. If this doesn't speak to conscious leadership, then I don't know what is. These codes are noble, but what we need in the cybersecurity space is action. And that is leaders be courageous and conscious. Those who can influence and inspire the course of human behavior by taking responsibility to prevent the social engineering and the terrifying consequences of digital breaches. Only when such leaders have the courage to admit that political, social, and economic reform cannot happen without the vigilance and corrective and conscious behavior, only then can we say that we live in a world peopled by conscious leaders who do the right thing. We are a long way from this ideal world. But until then, there needs to be a deepening narrative about the critical function of cybersecurity in all of its aspects. Thank you all.
Thank you, Brenda, for your insightful talk and everything about consciousness. The next speaker is Dylan Nell, the Head of Vendor Engagement at Cyber Retaliator Solutions. Dylan has been in cybersecurity for over a decade and has been dealing with most cybersecurity vendors in South Africa. Dylan's expertise and exposure in the cyberspace bring to the fore invaluable insight to this topic. Dylan will address us on the 3 keys to fast-track your cybersecurity posture for compliance. Over to you, Dylan.
Hi all, and thank you very much for the warm welcome, Sunisha. And thank you to the almost 50 members that have joined us tonight. So I really do appreciate your time. As you can see, my name is Dylan Null, or as Sunisha said, I am the Head of Vendor Engagement at Cyber Retaliator Solutions, or better known as CRS. We are based in Centurion, South Africa. I have a wealth of experience in sales, logistics, vendor engagement, contracts, pricing, commercials, a whole bunch of other things. I've been in the cybersecurity space for close to a decade, as Sunisha mentioned. I've worked closely with many of the cyber vendors in South Africa. I understand the market here fairly well. I have excellent relationships with most of the vendors as well as the resellers. And let it be known that I'm always ready to assist you with reaching your goals. So a little bit more about CRS. We're a cybersecurity distributor as well as an authorized IBM training center. Our head office is based in Centurion, although we do have training centers in Centurion, Midrand, and Cape Town. And for IBM training, we operate pretty much through the whole of Africa. We are also able to assist our partners with implementing and configuration of IBM security and network solutions. We have over 15 years of experience in the training sector, meaning that our training will allow your organization to internalize the world-class vendors that we deal with, as well as ensure that your organization always has the right people working on your network. And in doing that, we have also built our own cyber awareness solution. And that's exactly one of the topics that I will be discussing today or this evening after I get through some of the formalities. Just a few quick house rules. I'm sure as you guys have seen in the messages, the session is being recorded. We will be posting the recordings on social media, and we'll also share the links to our YouTube channel once it is uploaded. Should you have any questions, please feel free to post it in the chat box. If you'd like to post an anonymous question, please send a message to the host or CRS directly. And we will then have a Q&A session towards the end of the webinar where we will answer all of the questions, or at least try and get to it. All right, so if you have a more pertinent question, please raise your hand. The host will then request to unmute and the floor will pretty much be yours. So definitely looking forward to the interaction. So please don't be shy. Stick up your hand and give us a shout if you have anything to ask, or you think you've got something valuable to say, which I'm pretty sure that everybody does. So let me also take a second to thank the team involved in setting this webinar up. Brenda, Sanjay, Rachel, Raven, especially Dinesh and Sunisha and the entire ISC Squared team for pretty much affording me the opportunity to speak on this platform today. It really, I really am honored and I'm humbled, and definitely hoping it will be an interactive session, and I really look forward to sharing some knowledge and also obviously learning a bit from the crowd. Lastly, let me also thank my colleagues Tristan Govender and Ralph the Brain for the background support and the hosting of this event. I'm really thankful to be working with one of the strongest teams I've pretty much ever been with. With that being said, let me give a quick overview of some of the solutions that we work with. We have an endpoint detection and response solution that was awarded Gartner Cool Vendor of the Year in 2020. It is a next-gen endpoint threat detection and response platform. It's powered by AI. Further to that, and very pertinent to our discussion today, we have a phishing simulation tool, which is a solution that combines simulated phishing attacks with set and go training modules. Also, when we talk data security, we have a solution that covers encryption and mobile device management. And then we also do pen testing, web application scans, vulnerability assessments, which fits in perfectly with today's session. So let's talk a little bit about our most vulnerable assets, which are our human assets. And the reason for these types of discussions is that cybersecurity awareness in the climate of cybersecurity today is a necessity. And for South Africans, or at least for these South Africans in the room, we all know this, but you know, for our international visitors here in South Africa, we have a compliancy law that has just been passed a few months back, very similar to GDPR. It's called the POPI Act, and I'm sure the global listeners will have a very good idea of what your specific country requires when it comes to protection of personal information. So one of the corrective steps that can be taken when it comes to compliancy is user awareness training. Hence, it's a very hot topic at the moment. So the purpose behind cybersecurity training for employees is always to alter their habits and their behaviors and to create a sense of some sort of shared accountability so that the company safeguards themselves as well as their employees against attacks. And generally, courses should consist of modules outlining security fundamentals and provide a wide overview of actual tangible cybersecurity concepts and practices. And this is to provide fundamental practical knowledge about working habits and safely operating in an increasingly technology-driven world, as we all would know. So to put this in layman's terms, everyone needs to be tech savvy these days. There needs to, you know, there's so much to look for with everything that we do online, from receptionists to execs. Everyone at every company, all endpoints, all networks are targets. And the question is, am I ready? And maybe a more pertinent question is, are you ready? You know, I can tell you that the highest certified tech analysts and security engineers can be caught out too. All it needs is literally to be letting his or her guard down for a few seconds, and there you have it, and anything can happen. So providing a base about what employees need to know to keep your company data and devices safe, companies and the general population should at the very least go on some sort of course that covers the likes of spear phishing, malicious links, password use, outside of the office threats, especially in this day and age, malware, data protection. So perhaps that's a good one to cover, is the working remotely. So the out of the office threats is obviously a big one at the moment. When working outside of the office, employees must be on their guard against an array of threats. The email and browsing habits of employees can leave a company very much wide open to malicious software, which attacks company applications and social accounts. It steals information and possibly even money, obviously an issue. So it's crucial that cybersecurity training for employees in your company includes policies and guidelines for using email, internet, social media, and the like. Passwords is another big one. I know it's a cliche to say have a strong password, but inevitably we all use weak passwords. We reuse passwords for different accounts and applications. So this is actually a big one. Essentially, an attacker only then needs that one password and you're doomed, you know. So this is definitely an issue because passwords are the keys to your sensitive data when using websites, email accounts, and even your PC itself. Especially via user accounts. Now, companies need to provide users with an understanding of the importance of strong passwords, along with best techniques and tools to assist users in choosing and managing their own passwords. So let me speak a little bit on that subject about phishing and advanced spear phishing. Most cyber intrusion attempts begin with spear phishing emails. These are targeted attacks that are delivered via malicious links, via file attachments, login forms, and those kinds of things. And usually a user should be able to identify the warning signs and what to do in the event of a spear phishing attack. But we're obviously not all there, right? We need to be building user awareness to the key types of phishing attacks. We need to teach our staff how to identify types of attacks and what course of action to take in each instance. And it should also enable us to define phishing and its risk to ourselves, and also very importantly to the organization that we're working for. Because the truth is, your company gets hacked, and you have a very good chance of losing your job due to company closure. So it should also promote understanding of delivery methods for phishing attacks, including email, phone, and mobile, which are the most pertinent methods of phishing attacks. So basically, it should instill best practices on how to avoid phishing and enhance the ability to identify web links and suspicious URLs and social engineering and those types of things. And there's so much that we all need to be wary of. Think of it like living in South Africa. When we walk out of the door, we walk out of the front door, our guard needs to be up straight away. Even when we're at home, we constantly need to be on the lookout for threats. Things like your toddler throwing toys at the TV. We need to be on our toes all the time. So think about in that line when you're looking at your cyber defense, because the first line of defense is yourself. It is your staff. It is the people factor. And users should be able to identify threats and hone their competencies in how to avoid any sort of phishing. The users should be able to break down the parts of a link and the structure of a URL to reveal warning signs of a malicious link. They should be able to understand the importance of strong passwords, along with the best techniques and tools to assist in choosing and managing passwords. They should be able to identify policies, guidelines, and those sort of things when using emails, internet, social media. And they pretty much need to understand threats that linger in public places, like free Wi-Fi spots and that type of thing. And they should be concentrating on what they can do to protect the sensitive information that we're all carrying with us pretty much all the time. So users should understand what the different types of malware do, maybe not to that extent or to too much of a deep extent, but they should understand that there is malware and pretty much how it works and what it can do, and how to avoid falling victim to them or different types of malware. They should be able to, or they should actually be learning about processes to follow when reporting red flags, as well as the right people to talk to about suspicious cyber attacks or suspicions thereof. So, for example, if you receive an email that you think is a phishing scam, but you're not certain, best practice is obviously to phone the sender and ask them if they actually sent that email. And who cares if it's the CEO? I can guarantee you, if I were a CEO, I'd rather have a new staff member, or actually any staff member for that matter, phoning me to query whether I sent an email or not. At least then I actually know that my company is safer from cyber criminals, and I do have the right staff working with me. And we need to understand that phishing is a cyber crime that targets sensitive information, and especially of individuals, but also of organizations through the means of communication like email, telephone, text message. And again, we all know this. Curiosity is human nature. Clicking links, opening documents, operating with emotion and speed are all part of who we are. We're human beings. And these are the things that are the targets for attackers who deploy phishing attacks. So the question is, how do you protect your organization from phishing if it's based on human action and error? The attacks can be as serious as ransomware or network destructive viruses that could cost millions to fix for the larger organizations, and could even put the smaller guys out of business. Just quickly, a report I read a day or two ago showed that fixing your network after a ransomware attack is it was more than 10 times or more costly than paying the attackers to get your information back. So, these things are obviously very important. And I'm only covering a few examples of attacks, and these are vulnerabilities that cyber criminals use to target their employees, or target our employees rather, to get that data and sensitive information out of us. And these are some things that cannot be covered by antivirus or a network scan. They have to be identified and mitigated by your actual workforce, which is why we need to identify where the lack of skill in identifying such attacks come from, and to train all the defaulters to close the knowledge gaps, so that future attacks don't happen. So an excellent process would be to run a simulation on your staff. A simulation would send out a real-world attack that is pretty much customized to your own work environment. This would show you which employees would click on malicious links if they came across it. And in our experience, it usually just takes a few seconds once the employee receives communication that they will click on the link or enter information that they shouldn't. So a real-world example that I'm about to give you is we sent some of our staff on a full-day training course specific to cyber awareness. We then waited 2 days. We sent out a simulation, and guess what? I promise you, not even 90 seconds, and already the guys were clicking on things that they shouldn't have. So, and these are tech-savvy guys. These are guys that work in cybersecurity. So even the best of us can get caught out very quickly. So basically, you want a solution that is going to train you, train your staff, and then send out a simulation. And then for all of the defaulters, or the guys that are defaulting, send them on further training, and then in a few weeks' time or later, run another simulation. Guys, if you just want to check the lobby, there's still more people waiting in the lobby. And this way, so look, by running those simulations, and doing this sort of training, we are constantly training staff and keeping them on their toes, which is obviously very important. It's all good and well that we train them, but you need to keep the guys on their toes. You need them to think that when they receive an email, either it's the network admin trying to catch them out, or it is an actual real-world attack. But you actually want to not scare them away from emails, but make them very, very aware that there are these sorts of attacks. So another good mitigation point would be an integration with your emails, like let's say, for example, some of the solutions have a button that is integrated with your Outlook or with your G Suite. So basically what happens is one of your staff members perhaps receives an email that he or she deems is fishy. They then, instead of opening the email or clicking on any of the links or anything like that, they click on this button. The button then notifies the network administrator that there has been a targeted attack, or whatever the case is, or there's a fishy email that's come through to one of their users. The network admin then can actually go and check out the email, make sure that it is a legit email, and if it is a fishy email, obviously delete it from the person's laptop or endpoint. And then obviously search the network to see if any other staff members have received similar or the same email, or emails from a similar email address or the same email address, and then obviously just delete it off of the network directly. And this way you're kind of like mitigating other people perhaps opening an email that they shouldn't, you know. So we need to be looking at different ways of how things work for us, you know. So on the web and in email, hyperlinks are also a very easy tool for cyber criminals to what they do is they use it to deliver malware, and all it takes is a click of a link, and a person should be able to break down the parts of a link and the structure of the URL to reveal those warning signs of a malicious link. For example, something you should be very wary of is a link that is very, very long, for example. You know, generally links are very informative in what they show. They'll show the actual website, the name of the website, but if they've got any other characters in, well, then you need to start looking at what you're opening or what you're clicking on, because this is where things become very skeptical, or where you should become very skeptical. And, you know, don't be fooled into thinking that your small to medium-sized business is safe. You might think that this is so, and that these SMBs are safe from cyber threats, but the exact opposite is true. So here's a quick stat for you. In 2019, a report that showed that, or actually that read that 43% of attacks targeted small businesses. And even more alarming is that roughly 60% of these businesses that were attacked actually closed after one attack. So that's how important these things are. And the reasons you might think that your SMB is safe are the very reasons that these guys are attacking the SMBs. You know, lack of proper security systems or platforms, lack of funds to take rigorous precautions when attacks do happen. Smaller numbers of employees mean increased trust in the attack vectors, such as spoofed emails. A big one is a complacent mindset, like especially us South African. Well, it won't happen to me because of the size of my organization. Well, I can guarantee you that's the exact opposite of what you should be thinking. And it's exactly the way the attackers know that all of us are actually thinking. So we need to realize that the security industry, it's changed. The threat landscape is evolving. It's adopting sophisticated business models, just like a successful, legitimate organization. So cyber criminals can generally expect to earn 1,000% plus on an investment of a 30-day malware campaign, for example. And to them, where there is profit is potential, and that's business for them. And these days, most cyber criminal groups are operating as legit businesses. And I'm sure you guys have heard all of these stories. They have organizational charts, HR departments. They address various black market verticals and trade various types of commodities, from stolen end user and company data to malicious code and criminal services like hacking into corporate networks and the like. And a very noteworthy trade is the latter two that I just mentioned there. It's led to a business model called malware as a service, which demonstrates the increasing levels of sophistication of these guys, the creativity, the maturity within this actual market. And that's exactly what it is. It's a market. So through this, let's call it innovation, cyber criminal organizations have proven their new business model of a blanket spread of malware or ransomware is actually the most profitable form of distribution. And in doing so, proving the fact that literally every business is a target, including the smaller ones. These guys don't care who they hit as long as they hit somebody. So the stats and data on the subject are actually endless. Global IT security skills shortages have now actually surpassed 4 million. According to ISC squared, the certifications organization compiled its latest cybersecurity workforce study from interviews over 3,200 security professionals around the world. And the number of unfulfilled positions now stands at 4.07 million professionals, up from 2.93 million a year ago. And this includes 561,000 from North America and a staggering 2.6 million shortfall in the APAC region. Now, I've just had to try and memorize those stats, but I just read them out loud there. But basically, the shortage of skilled workers in the industry in Europe alone has soared by more than 100% in this actual time period. And nearly 2/3 of the responding companies reported a shortage of cybersecurity staff. And these guys had a lack of skilled or experienced security personnel. So just to put that into perspective, that's 66 out of every 100 companies reported this. I don't know what you guys think, but that's a pretty high number. And this is one that is it's a great concern. The majority of IT staff are considered as generalists. Complex and expensive hardware need to be configured constantly and maintained by actual security specialists, which is obviously very difficult because not one guy can know absolutely everything about everything. So it does get quite difficult. And then things like challenges faced by companies in combating cybercrime. Like I was saying, there's a lack of cybersecurity skill within organizations, as most IT personnel are generalists. So when companies invest in cybersecurity solutions such as AVs and firewalls and all the others, they are often unable to understand the solution's outputs, and in most cases, the solutions are not really actually configured properly, which ultimately renders them ineffective against most threats. So what is the point of having a firewall if it's not going to protect you? Things like costs associated with specialist cybersecurity services makes it way unaffordable for most SMEs. Then the rate at which most threats are being made into existence and the severe nature in the way they work is extremely difficult for companies to keep up to date with. And then to put adequate measures in place to mitigate the risk on an ongoing basis. I mean, you can't expect to cover every or patch every single hole that there is, although we pretty much are required to, but we will almost never get there. So there's this inability for organizations to identify and rectify security breaches in a timely manner. And then there's also the inability of understanding the exact cause of a security breach, which makes it extremely difficult for these companies to prevent further security breaches. I think there might have been a question there. Looking at my screen. I'll get to those later, guys. Like I said, if it is a pertinent question, please feel free to just keep your hand and perhaps we can have a little bit of a chat. But more than happy to take care of the questions at the end. So guys, my point of view is you need to, for example, do pen testing at least once a year and vulnerability assessments or web application scans for a more complex website on a monthly basis. And these are all things that I'm actually also learning as we go along. You know, I deal with a lot of analysts, a lot of guys that are in this space. So I do actually learn a lot more from them than what I give out, unfortunately, for them, but very fortunate for me. So I thank you for that, guys. The way that you can see exactly where the holes are, as well as how you are progressing in securing your data and your network is exactly where the space lies. You know, you need to be doing things like vulnerability assessments, web app scans, penetration testing, like I was saying, and then to make sure that your staff are well trained and always alert. And you do this by constant training and the intermittent phishing simulation that I was speaking about earlier. So further to this, your patch management should always be up to date, and your endpoint security needs to be in line with something like an endpoint detection and response. So you definitely need a solution that goes above and beyond what your legacy antivirus does. You need actual EDR or endpoint detection and response. So basically you run a vulnerability assessment or a web application scan. What this does is test your external facing IPs for vulnerabilities. You see how hackers could possibly intrude through your firewalls and the like. Once you have your report back, you want the report to identify what patches are required or what needs to be fixed. And then the obvious is fixing what is broken or what the report deems broken. And then run the assessment again and compare your first and your second reports to see what the effect of the changes you made on your network, or what the effect was. So basically you want to run these on a monthly or at the very least on a quarterly basis, and they are fairly cheap, so the assessments don't break the bank. But now, speaking on that subject, now for the big one, the penetration testing is something that you actually want to run at least annually. What the pen test should do is ping or touch every single device, firewall, endpoint, printer, switch, any other device on your network. And it should scan for all vulnerabilities. It should identify rogue accounts, for example. It should identify active accounts for staff that are no longer on the payroll, if you know what I'm saying. And realistically, a report should be a few hundred pages, even on a smaller network. And it should come with an exec report that shows all the major vulnerabilities and give a good idea of how to remediate them. The problem with this usually is that penetration testing is quite costly, but also it's actually quite time consuming. So although it is costly, the guys actually, if they do take the time and do it properly, you will get a decent report out of that. So just very quickly, do make sure that your organization software is updated. The security patch is a program designed by these tech firms to address a specific trending cyber threat, or cyber threats, should I say. And these must be installed as soon as the prompts are received on your device. The time between when the threat is first discovered and when the patch is installed on a device is a huge target for attackers, and it's what's known as a zero-day exploit. For example, your employees may continue to evade the security patches or the updates because they think it'll be disruptive. And generally, I feel the pain. I don't want to start work at 8 in the morning and then I've got to wait for 15 minutes for my laptop to restart. So guys are generally they worry that it'll be disruptive to their daily workflow and put them on the back foot, installing, restarting the computer, blah, blah, blah. Bottom line is these patches are extremely important and need to be done as soon as. So instruct your employees to authorize the updates outside of normal hours, for example, 2 o'clock in the morning, whatever the case is, or have your IT department handle the upgrades. Never ever allow your device to have access to your network if it's got outdated software. I mean, these things are obvious to a few of us. But your general guy just doesn't really, he doesn't think that far. He and she wants to get their work done and then prove that they are the best at what they do. But in doing so, they're leaving these vulnerabilities on the table. So there's multiple security patches available every week, and each one of these is vitally important to install. And then lastly, data protection. This is obviously a very, very big one. We all should know this. And this is exactly where the likes of encryption comes in. So for example, if your device is lost or stolen, you want that data to definitely be encrypted. No one but the owner should have access. These are fairly obvious things. I suppose obvious to some, but not obvious to all. Just wait until you lose a laptop or your phone, and then you realize how important your data actually is. So MDM and encryption is, in this day and age, is definitely a must-have. Another big one to teach your staff is don't reuse passwords across multiple applications. Just a little bit of information can give a hacker the keys they need to open the door. Now, think of all the things that you share on social media: kids' names, pets' names, birth dates, favorite sports teams, hobbies, that kind of thing. And then take that information and think about your favorite password. Chances are that they're very similar to the stuff that you're actually posting on social media. So you'd want to create a password or passwords that mean nothing. They're just random. So to make things even worse, you probably use the same passwords across all sites, like email, banking sites, social media platforms, website login pages. So when it's time to update those passwords, maybe you should add, or maybe not, maybe you should, but what you do is you just add another number, and in the end you call it security. So here's the bad news: is that most secure passwords are between 10 and 15 random letters and include special characters and numbers. And if that's not bad enough, then you also need to incorporate some sort of random capital letters throughout the fake word that you're creating there, or the fake text that you're creating. So basically what you need to do to mitigate this password issue is also look at a solution that has multi-factor authentication, or MFA, as an added extra. But over and above this, you'd need a platform that enforces encryption as well as access control on all of your employee-used devices. And that way you can actually protect that data very well. So again, ask yourself the questions like this. When a device goes missing or lands up in the hands of a disgruntled employee, what access would you like them to have to that device? I think the answer is fairly obvious, and I'm really hoping it is. But you don't want them to have access to anything. Realistically, you don't actually want them to even have the device, but more specifically, the data on the device that they might have stolen or taken. And without a decent solution in place, data will be lost. And you'd need a platform that does things like enforce the encryption, like I've been saying, and provide access control across all of your devices, from PCs to cell phones to tablets, anything else that touches your information or has your information on. So as I've been saying, employees are the weakest link in an organization, and taking the responsibility to safeguard data out of their hands is very beneficial to the employee as well as the company. I mean, as we would all know, pretty much everyone is working at home at the moment. I think things might slowly but surely change, not totally back to the way they were, but still pretty much, at least most people that I know of are still working at home, and inevitably it's showing that organizations that are working from home and remotely is pretty much the way forward. But with this new way of working, there's so many risks that come, and we have to face this somehow. So data relating to the organizations or the operations of the organization is constantly flowing between employee devices. and the organization requires some sort of control over this data or the devices if the device ends up in these wrong hands, like I've been saying. And we all know that a lack of control measures is where the major risk comes from, whether it's in an general employee or a CEO. Having little to no data security would allow ease of access by many external factors. And when attacks do happen, there needs to be proof that some sort of steps were taken for the purposes of compliance, especially now in South Africa, as well as investigative measures. This will definitely help organizations by safeguarding them from a legal perspective if a data breach did occur. So as mentioned, the aim is to take the responsibility to protect data out of the hands of employees. So the landscape of work has changed, where we see the movement to a more mobile means of working. That is laptops, tablets, etc., which means that there's bound to be a global reform of personal data handling and regulations. And we see this in the growing concerns of individuals with regards to how data is obtained, how it's used, is it protected, how it's protected. And you definitely don't want your organization or your client's organization to be at the forefront of those types of concerns because just because they didn't take necessary steps to protect data. Many organizations face business as well as personal liability for data mishandling and breaches, and these results in things like fines or further legal action, which in turn damages reputation. It causes loss of clients, it contributes to missed business opportunities and the like. And I'm sure you can all agree that at the moment, business and keeping your business and keeping your clients happy is extremely important. And that is exactly why we need to safeguard ourselves and our clients from these threats and risks. And to be compliant with data protection acts, especially in the changing work environment of today. I'm mentioning GRC quite a bit here because of the importance of data handling. Organizationally controlled enforced encryption and access control are two extremely important features in closing the gaps of endpoint data risk. But not being able to prove that they are in place is just as dangerous to the organization if some sort of mishap does occur. So encryption is something that is pretty much overlooked by most organizations because of the misconceptions around it. And this is obviously a huge issue. Encrypting data encrypting data for protection is obviously a must. So we all know that employee trust is essential as well. But limiting the movement of data between their devices in the current remote working environment is also essential. And if you must allow it, then at least ensure that the security of that data on those devices can be achieved. A good example of this is employees taking data off of the PCs with USBs. You need to find ways of mitigating this, especially if the guys are going to be job hopping. Next is things like backing your data up frequently to the cloud, in case something does happen. If the unthinkable happens and your network is breached, then you need to have some sort of a copy of your data stored somewhere where you can access it very quickly to minimize downtime. I mean, downtime is obviously a huge issue, especially with the bigger guys, and with the smaller guys as well. You can't afford to take a week off of work because you can't get into where you need to get into, or you've been locked out of your own network or the like. So you can back up your files locally, but make sure that they are stored separately from your main network. A business continuity plan is a vital key for keeping your network protected. Your data needs to be copied and stored offsite, like I've been saying. And a cloud storage solution is a great solution for backup, disaster, and recovery plans. And also always remember, employees are the weakest link. I mean, I like all employees. It's like chatting with everyone, but we are our own weakest links. So especially in security, employees contribute to nearly half of the risks, probably more. Everybody has their own point of view. And cyber criminals are known to exploit the weakest links in the security fabric of an organization. Employee negligence, whether intentional or unintentional, it's a serious cyber security loophole, and it can lead to bigger disasters such as incidents of data breaches. Another pertinent or important thing you have to look at is insider cybercrime. So this is cyber attacks carried out by actually employees or other parties associated with a company that are, these things are becoming more and more common. So according to a report from Computer Associates, 90% of companies feel that insiders pose a threat. So this just shows the distrust, but in often cases, it is pretty much fairly close to the truth. I'm not saying the 90% is true of employees, but you do get employees that unfortunately do job hop, especially in the sales side of things, and they do like to take information with them, whether it's on their laptop or in their minds. And insider crime can be very difficult to detect, especially if the insider has high-level privileges to your network. So insiders can also be involved in collusion with many outsiders. So crimes like theft of company secrets are often done in collusion. A competitive company offering financial rewards, for example, to one of your employees. I mean, the stuff's very lucrative, especially to the guys that maybe have been with the company and haven't got that annual raise of 20% or whatever the case is. So perhaps just to do a quick recap. Spear phishing, the most common cause of data breaches, targeted emails sent to small groups or individuals, uses social engineering tactics, delivers file attachments, entices you to click on links that you shouldn't be clicking on, tricks you into handing over your login credentials. So spear phishers personalize emails to gain your trust. Things like full name, mailing addresses, bank account number, name of your employer. There was a breach that I heard about, or a possible breach or close to a breach that I heard about a few weeks back, where a person was imitating a yoga instructor for almost 2 years with I think it might have been, I might be mistaken here, but I think it might have been somebody out of NASA, online yoga. The person had been sending the target, emails, and they got to know each other, and they were sending meal plans across and all of that. And about 2 years later, the attacker then finally made their move and got caught out straight away. Thank goodness. But this is the extent of what guys are doing. Taking up to 2 years to get into companies like maybe the big banks or like the NASA's or the very big guys that are well known. And what better for a hacker to somehow get into NASA and, brag about it. Sometimes it's not always about the money, but most of the time it is. So you need to know how to spot phishing emails and these sort of phishing attacks. You need to look closely at errors like grammar errors, spelling, punctuation, syntax errors, those types of things, and then look for contextual clues like device, tone, signature, that type of thing. These guys aren't always as savvy as what you think they are, and these things are generally, not generally, but a lot of the time they're easy to figure out. So when it comes to social engineering, questions should be asked like how many. For example, how many of you have a multitude of internet cloud platforms that you use regularly? Now I'm talking about the likes of social media like Facebook, Twitter, personal email accounts, online banking, etc. So ask yourself that question in your own time, and then ask yourself this question: how many of those sites will only accept a complex password when you do your setup? So minimum 8 characters with uppercase and lowercase, and then special characters, and pretty much all of them require this sort of complex password. So what happens is human nature dictates that no normal person could possibly remember a multiple set of different complex passwords for all of these sites. So what do most people do? They maybe have two passwords that are usually very similar, but pretty much only 2, for all of these sites. And then, I know it, we all do it. So the constant hassle of having to reset your password every time you forget it, it's a huge frustration. So how many of us actually use the same password for all of our social media accounts, for our personal email, as well as our company password? And that's, I'm hoping you guys will all agree with me, but that's an issue, right? Maybe let me leave this with you before we move to Q&A. When handling sensitive information, accessing the internet, you should generally keep the same mindset, whether it's at work or out of the office. That is this: proceed with caution. Being cautious about your surroundings as well as who you share your information with goes an extremely long way toward protecting your personal as well as your work-related privacy. Certain practices can be used to keep your information safe when you're not at your desk. For example, if an online account is breached, all of the information inside that account is now obviously vulnerable. So store personal and work-related information in separate accounts. And keep this in mind. If it seems too good to be true, I promise you it is. So phone the sender if you're not sure. Have things like good endpoint protection in place. So your legacy antiviruses, although very pertinent, they just don't do enough anymore. You need to look at endpoint detection and response, or what they call EDR. So to give you a quick overview of what EDR is, or what we like to call it, it's your future of the legacy antivirus. So we all understand that with the innovation and growth in technology, there will be greater threats and criminals who make use of these innovations in malicious ways. And the way they continue to develop their skills to exploit organizations is unreal. So EDR grants all of the features required to keep up with the current threats and the always advancing skills that these cyber criminals have, as well as their threats. And it should be noted that EDR solutions compete very heavily with each other. So not all of them are the same. Some are stronger than others. So the question is basically who has the best EDR? And as I said, the scope of your traditional antivirus or your AV is simplistic. It's limited. It runs checks against a known database of signature-based and heuristic-based threats. It then alerts the user and offers ways to remediate the threats. And like I've been saying, although this has worked well in the past due to the advancement in technology, is the issue. There's been a huge growth in malice and the way in which attackers work and design malware to morph once it hits your endpoint. And this is exactly why your traditional AV is not really actually good enough for most organizations, or actually all organizations anymore. So your next best step would be to take an EDR solution that has its own antivirus or integrates very well with other AV solutions. Yeah, so what EDR should do, or at least they should serve for a broader spectrum and contain tools like whitelisting tools, monitoring tools, anti-malware, behavioral protection, threat hunting and threat remediation, advanced threat detections and threat analysis, and quite a lot of other things. I mean, the list isn't endless, but there's quite an extensive list of what we should be looking for in an EDR system or solution. But it should be a comprehensive protection against cyber attacks. And this is also where most of these EDR solutions compete with each other. The tool sets that they're able to offer is what gives the difference in opinion when it comes to EDR and MDR, or managed detection and response. Discovery and alerts to cyber risk are two major issues in the current climate of cybercrime in organizations. And the issue lies in the fact that the longer there's a vulnerability on your endpoint or your PC or your phone or whatever the case is, the more at risk your data is. And usually data breaches occur due to lack of security measures and the inefficient alerting systems that you might have, as well as the inefficient overview of the systems that you might have in place. And the breaches can take place months before the discovery of the breaches, months before the breaches are actually seen, And this is a huge, huge issue. Again, I know I'm preaching to the choir here. But with the number of cyber attacks on the rise and the growing numbers of companies that experience some sort of breach, cyber risk is the equivalent of business risk. So, for example, you fail with sales, you have a good chance of failing. You get hacked, you have an equally good chance of failing or closing down. And breaches happen due to a multiple or a variety of causes, but primarily due to poor visibility and response over the alert noise. So you need a system that will handle and tailor the alerts and reduce alert noise for you, or at least for the analysts, so that they can spot the real threats. So like I've been saying, cyber risk is a business risk and you need to be protected. And we tend to think that because we have certain people working on our network, it's okay. And like I've been saying, although the people factor is a usually positive one. Human errors do happen more often than not. And at least our customers that we're dealing with prefer less alerts that are highly consolidated as compared to multiple and less informative ones. And this approach consistently reduces the manual workload, and it provides a clear picture of the events that are unfolding with no need to chase attackers over hundreds or thousands of different events. So you need some sort of system that's going to break this down for you. And then perhaps also look into added extras, like one of the solutions that we deal with has something called a Nano OS. And what this does is it puts the hacker or malware into an environment that makes it seem as if they're gaining ground and accessing your system, when in reality the operating system is actually unaffected. And with that being said, I think it's about enough preaching to the choir, like I've been saying. So guys, it's been great. My contact details should follow in the next few slides. Please reach out if you have any queries or requests. Team CRS, Team ISC Squared, again, I really do thank you for your support. I thank you all for listening. I hope it's been informative. I hope that you can use at least one, but I'm hoping multiple things that I've mentioned tonight. I now hand over to Mr. Tristan Govender, who will be emceeing the Q&A. So in saying that, thank you for your time. Tristan Govender, over to you, sir.
Thanks for that, Dylan, and thanks everyone for joining in. Really appreciate your time. Like Dylan said, if you have any questions that you would like to ask on mic, you can feel free to raise your hand. We'll unmute you and we'll answer your question. We do have a few in the chat box though. We have one from Dan. Okay. And we have one from Dan. Is a lack of skills an organization issue, or is it an industry issue? Okay.
So Dan, very good question, but I think it's an all-round issue. So I think there's very few organizations that have the skills that are required. And generally, you're looking at the financial guys and the law firms, and these guys all have weird and wonderful things in place, but they also have the staff complement. But when you're looking at an all-round, all industries, I don't think that anybody has, except for maybe the banks, like I've been saying, have the right amount of staff and the skilled enough staff to deal with all the different threats that you are getting. So unless you have a staff complement of 10,000 plus, and you have that 100 or 200 cybersecurity staff members, and these are the numbers that you're looking at when you're looking at the banks. These guys have specifically people that will be working on one solution on the network, for example, their SIM only, and that's what these guys will focus on. And then they'll have a different group of people that are working on their endpoints only. So that works very well. But even these guys, they might have a very layered defense, but it's still, if you're going to have a spear phishing, if somebody wants to get in, they're most likely going to get in. You're going to have to be very, very skilled to block any sort of hard attack. But I think it definitely is not just one industry, all industries have a huge lack. I think that the strongest of the industries when it comes to cybersecurity is the financial guys. And I hope that answers your question, or at least that's my point of view.
Perfect. Thanks for that, Dylan. Really appreciate it. We have another question from Dinesh Govender. With LinkedIn, is it possible for attackers to create bogus job postings for malicious social media engineering purposes? And how do we hold large companies like this to account?
Sure. Okay. Dinesh, that's a very good question. Two-toned question. So the first part is absolutely yes. Why wouldn't they? Why, if I required somebody's information or just general sort of information, you're talking about people's names, email addresses, possibly depending on the questions that are being asked on the job offers or the job postings are ID numbers, possible addresses, actual physical addresses, and all of these things are things that attackers can use. But in saying that, the person then goes onto LinkedIn, they apply, the attacker then has a legit email address that they have, or they spoof, and they ask the person for more, more in detail information like proof of bank and that type of thing. So yes, absolutely. The guys would most definitely be doing this. Tristan, if you wouldn't mind just reading the second part of that question again.
So how do we
what do companies need
organizations to account?
Look, I mean, I've seen, yeah, thanks, Tristan. I've seen major companies have their websites copied, literally word for word. So what can these guys do? I don't think that they can do much. They can do forensics, and yes, they might actually come down to finding one or two of the guys that have been trying to do anything malicious. But generally, these guys are out of your country. They're based in a different country. They might be based in a country where things like this aren't really legit, but aren't considered maybe a crime. Hence, I've been saying there's actual companies that have HR departments and all the rest that actually run these types of attacks. So if you take a larger organization, for example, if they are being attacked in this way, there's not much that they can do except get hold of the guys at LinkedIn and say, look, this isn't ours. Can you please look into it so that it can be stopped? But inevitably, the guys are just going to find different ways of reposting. So it becomes quite difficult. Should they be held accountable? I suppose in some sort of in some sense, yes. But I mean, what more can they do?
Great. Just from my end on that one, we see this a lot with Facebook as well. We see that it's an ongoing case with Facebook and how they push out political propaganda in the US and etc. It's the same story with LinkedIn. How do you know whether something is legitimate or if it's just been boosted because they paid for it? And that's the whole issue with paid ads as well. And that's exactly why we're here today. That cyber awareness aspect of individuals have to understand how to identify those things for themselves as well. But most definitely, organizations like LinkedIn, like Facebook, Instagram, all these social media companies need to be held accountable for what their vetting process is for certain information.
Yeah,
they should be able to have teams dedicated to finding out what actual posts are fake or not. If it's reported, if it's something that looks suspicious, they should be able to pick up on something like that. And I think they are progressing towards that. Definitely, especially in the last decade, we see that a lot of the issues have come up in courts, especially in America.
I tend to agree with you, Tristan. Very, very well done there. Just as Facebook has that, I'm pretty sure it's got a fake button somewhere. I'm not really that well versed with Facebook, but I suppose LinkedIn could perhaps, on job postings, have a button that any sort of external party could click on and say, look, guys at LinkedIn, please look at this. This seems to be a fishy job, a job posting. So look into it and either take the advert down or get hold of the company and find out if it is actually legit. Do they have registration numbers, VAT numbers, and the like?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly that. Okay, perfect. So Dinesh, does that answer your question? You happy with that? Perfect. Okay, we have a question from Rachel as well. Do you think we'll come to a point where we'll remove the burden of security from our users? So can we rely on technologies instead to keep us safe?
Well, look, I think that's what everyone is pushing for, but essentially there's no way of taking it all the way out of the user's hands, because these sort of attacks can happen over the phone, SMS, literally voice calls. So how do you stop a person from speaking? So unless they don't know the answer, that's the only way, is to keep the information away from them. But then you kind of like mitigating why would you actually employ somebody if they don't know anything about your company? So no, I don't think so. Perhaps the guys will come up with some clever ways to mitigate it, but I really doubt it very much, because essentially you need to be speaking to your customer, you need to be answering the phone, and in doing so, that's where you're going to get attacked. If they can somehow mitigate the email email attacks and that sort of thing, the guys are just going to find different ways. Perhaps move back to, post, that type of thing. I mean, these types of scams have been around since before the internet. Sending what do you call a chain mail around and that sort of thing. So no, I doubt it very much. Very good question though.
Okay, great. Yeah, no, indeed, that was a very good question. We do have another one here. Just from my end on that one as well. Like we say, if all those solutions, they come at a cost as well. So, organizations are going to have to pay that cost, and inevitably they're going to need that multi-layered approach to security. But at the end of the day, you also want individuals to grow their cyber awareness. In the future, we move towards a more technical or technology-focused future. So everyone kind of needs to get on the same page eventually if you're going to have a future. So definitely one that you have to look into as an end user, as a company, and as an organization.
Well said, Mr. Governor.
Fantastic. We have another question from Brian Baxter. I don't see any reference to frameworks. What do you suggest?
Brian, how are you doing, man? It's good to have you on the line. Tristan, if you wouldn't mind just repeating that question there.
I don't see any reference to frameworks. What do you suggest?
Brian, do you mind if we take that question offline? I'd be glad to give you a call and.
Perfect. Okay. Thanks for that, Brian. Really appreciate it. We have another question from Trust. Data breaches occur. Who do we tell? Who do we have to tell? So I'm guessing that when a data breach does occur, who do we report it to?
So, Tristan, I'll actually leave that question up to you.
Okay, perfect.
Trust, good to have you on the line. Trust.
Thanks, Dylan.
Sure. Tristan, over to you.
Perfect. So there are multiple organizations to report it to. I think now we have the compliance officers that we report it to. You can have your auditors who come into audit. They would know exactly who to refer it to. And I think we actually have Amit on the line here, and he actually dealt very closely with the developments of the POPIA Act as well coming into place. Amit, I'm not sure if you are available, but I think you would have some interesting insight there as well.
Hi, Justin. Yeah, thanks. I was actually just typing a note to Trust on the chat box there as a response. The first report has to be internally to the information officer, the registered information officer to the organization. Secondly, there is an obligation to report the breach notification to the regulator. The POPI regulator has just issued a guidance note on reporting a breach. So you can actually get that information from the information regulator portal or the website, as well as the Department of Justice website. In addition, there is an obligation as well to report the breach or as a responsible party. POPI prescribes by law that you must notify the affected party or personal information of the data subjects that has been accessed or acquired by any unauthorized persons. But that is subject to the regulator guidance. So your first two steps to remember is firstly your information officer internally, because they'll need to accumulate that information and reports, etc. And then that information officer under law owns a responsibility to report to the regulator. Whether there's been a material breach or not, it's irrespective. Your responsibility under the law is to report that and to take the responsible action. So the guidance note is giving that, and that's published on the portal.
Perfect. Thanks for that, Amit. That was extremely insightful there. Okay, so that's perfect. I trust that answers the question. We also have another question from Dan. Any comments on what the minimum skill set is for breach investigation that will satisfy the regulators? Amit, I'm going to hand that one over to you again because I know you definitely have more experience there as well.
Sure. So generally, depending on how the scope of the breach, and if you have something like cyber insurance, almost all of the underwriters in South Africa have approved forensic investigators and forensic analysts, IT and non-IT, on their boards or on their membership panels. So depending on how you're going about, deciphering that breach and essentially reporting that breach, and if you have cyber insurance, then essentially that guidance will be, provided by the cyber insurance underwriter in most cases. But there are various forensic investigators, and almost all of the big auditing firms in the country have got that. And again, it depends on the scope of that breach, if it pertains to bank information, etc. Then again, there are custodian and ombuds bodies that you can refer to. So SABRIC definitely is one for banking related information or account related information. Contacting the bank will also, or your bank will also be able to assist you if it's bank related data. Of course, if it's personal data that you're accumulating and ID numbers and those kind of things that you're accumulating, then the forensic investigators and the forensic analysts will guide you there. So again, the regulator will have some bits of information on their website, but at this point it's still evolving. So your trusted forums are going to be the forums and the panels with the big audit firms and the big legal firms. Thanks.
Excellent. Thanks for that, Amit.
Thanks. Just a worthy note there that Amit is from a vendor called Beachhead Secure and definitely doing some excellent work here in South Africa. As you can, I'm not sure if any of you have opened that document yet, but it covers two of those major ones, which is access control, data encryption, and defensive measures, or a few of them. So definitely one to look into.
Yeah, just a reminder, Tristan, if anybody's missed it, it's posted in the chat box. So the guidance note from the regulator is posted there on what they've learned and what they prescribe you do.
Fantastic. Does anyone else have any other questions? Don't see any other further questions.
That's about it.
Feel free to unmute yourself, guys, if you would like to ask live.
Nope, I think that's about it, Tristan.
Okay, fantastic. I just want to ask Dinesh if you have any words over this. Sure.
Thank you. I just want to say that it was quite informative and really picked up a lot of good pointers in this short presentation. So yeah, I just want to say thanks to you guys in the team. Quite happy.
Excellent. Thanks a lot, Dinesh. Means the world. Perhaps we can hand over back to Sunisha.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Dylan, Tristan, as well as Amit, for all your input this evening. Thank you, Dylan, for assisting us to build an action plan to improve our cybersecurity effectiveness. Cybersecurity threats are affecting every individual in our global society, and the impact is felt by every global citizen. We must be prepared to defend against quickly evolving cybersecurity threats. As the chapter of cybersecurity professionals, we would like to extend cybersecurity awareness and strategy to companies, professionals, as well as the man in the street. To enable the chapter to achieve this, I urge any company or individual to partner with the chapter to facilitate us to achieve our vision. As the chapter sponsorship expands, it will facilitate numerous initiatives to create more cybersecurity awareness and education. Thank you, Brenda Kelly and Dylan Nell, for partnering with the Gauteng chapter tonight and offering us your expert knowledge. Thank you all delegates for joining us this evening, and I hope you all have gained great insight into our topics tonight. From me, Sanisha Romesa, I bid you good night and stay cyber safe. Thank you.